Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. Today's special guest is Dave Hoffmann. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, how come you got Dave Hoffmann on again? You just had him on a couple of weeks ago. Harper, what are you thinking? Well, the reason that we're doing this is because we only got into a small portion of his life and a great deal of what he was able to do after football, after he was done playing, is significant. It's important. And I know that you guys are going to love it. So for Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, for Vincent Turner, our co-host and founder, I just want to welcome everybody to the show, and especially welcome for the second time. Thank you, Dave, for being a part of today's show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, we are thrilled to have the second portion. On portion one, the first part, we talked about your high school. We talked about the early days at UW. We talked about building the camaraderie that would turn out to be a really good Rose Bowl championship team, a national champion, and then all the legacy that is a part of that. You're going to be going to reunions for the rest of your life and getting to talk to guys about all the great things that happened while you were there at the University of Washington. Were you in the dog father photo that they have where Don James is sitting and everybody else is looking like they're in
That's right.
Were you in?
Yes, sir. I was right behind Coach, and that was our cast of characters. That was the linebacking crew, and so James Clifford, Chico Fraley, Brett Collins, Jaime Fields, especially, God rest his soul, and myself, and they gave us mafioso names, and it was a fun shoot. But of course, Coach James was such a stickler for the rules that the store that donated all the clothes for us to wear, we had to give them back. So, but it was fun.
Today, that would never happen.
Exactly.
But back in the day, everything was by the book, right? So even
a
photo shoot where you guys all look like you're a bunch of gangsters. You found it, Logan. You're awesome. There he is. All right. Now, did any of you have any wardrobe issues where, hey, this shirt doesn't fit, you're going to have to go, and then they go with a XXX and it was a little too big? Were there anything about that shoot that was unusual?
Well, so you remember, and especially for linebackers, trying to get something that fits you and also fits your neck was a little tough. So we had some top buttons undone. I remember, I think Jaime Fields had some stitches that they tried to cover up with a hat. We were in two-a-days, and so there were some forehead bruising and stitches that were covered up, but that all worked pretty well. So
now, I had read somewhere that you were a bleeder, meaning that somewhere between the bridge of your nose, right up there in between where your eyes are, and your forehead, you would do something every 2 days each year, and your helmet was something. You'd get a scratch or a cut. Next thing you know, you're bleeding every day in practice.
That's right, and as you know, those things don't heal up very easily, and you keep reopening. It's like a boxer going out every day and doing his thing, and so it just kind of kept going, and usually by the end of warm-ups before a game, you look like you'd just been through a prize fight, and the trainers would patch you up with whatever they had, and you'd go on. But yeah, I guess a bleeder might be the right kind of like a stuck pig.
Yeah. Were you a moleskin guy? Remember that gel that kind of looked kind of weird? Would you put moleskin on there, and that made it worse?
Yeah, I try whatever they gave me, and I think they just didn't want it to look like a crime scene on TV.
Yeah. Well, I know that Peyton Manning looked like the dude in Home Alone when he got hit in the head with the iron. Every time he'd take his helmet off, he looked like there was just this big imprint of the forehead of the helmet that he had to deal with. And his hairline is so high that it made it even more.
That's right.
So
exactly.
Whatever the name of the guy was that was in Home Alone that did the scream when the tarantula goes on. Well, I'm sure you never scream like that. But that always gets a laugh out of me. It's a great part of the movie. That you didn't get that as a nickname. So
I didn't exactly.
Good for you there.
Yeah.
All right. You're a national champion. I'm thinking the next thing in the book and the chapter for you is, all right, we get back to, I'll go back to classes for a little bit, but really I'm not going to class. You can't, you're on top of the mountain, but you got the NFL draft coming up.
Right.
When was the portion of your, I need to shift? I'm no longer a Husky, even though I'm here on campus. I need to start working out and get myself ready for the eventual NFL draft there in '92.
Yeah, so that was really it was really after the the last Rose Bowl, I was really hoping to end on a win, especially playing with my brother and trying to have one last hurrah down there in Pasadena. Finished up, I was pretty beat up. I'd been walking around all year in a boot. I think we mentioned that before, and trying to work with an injury, and I probably should not have gone on and played in the. I played in a couple postseason games, the Shrine Game and the Hula Bowl back in the day. I don't know if they still have those, but went right away. Jumped on a plane and played those, and hindsight's 2020. Should have got off my leg, off my foot, and got some rest, and also just started training and doing working the drills for the for the combine. I didn't do that, and I paid for it, and wasn't going to be one of these top picks as it goes anyways with my size and everything, but I didn't help myself out in that regard, and so that was something I did realize that when I got back from the Rose Bowl, that, and actually I think I was done. I had earned my degree. I had that in my pocket, so that was neither here nor there. But it was
Now you're on a quarter system at Washington, is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah,
So the way I
that's right.
remember it, Dave, and if I'm wrong, forget. Basically, you get the week or maybe a 10-day break for Christmas, and classes start pretty much the first Monday after New Year's. Is that about right?
That's right. No, that's exactly it. Exactly right. And so it was just, it was a real quick turnaround. I only had a little bit of class left, but it was one of those things where you're heading somewhere else, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned the injuries. Your neck, how about the shoulders, lower back? You got a groin injury, so your legs are bothering you, and it's your ankle. I don't know if it was a broken
Yeah.
bone or whatever, and you got plantar fascia. You answer by the name Lucky at that time, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, and it was a crazy foot injury. I think we talked about it, metatarsal carpals, whatever they are down there. But
Plantar fascia too, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And those are injuries like we all know, and like you feel those today. But it was really before I knew really what the issue was, I thought I had a cracked heel, and I'm thinking to myself, that's the hardest bone in the body. How can that be cracked? And then you realize this plantar fasciitis is it doesn't sound like much, but boy, it'll kick your ass.
Yeah. Somewhat excruciating. My issue, and I'm going to get to you in a second, and please forgive me. I'm just
Yeah,
my when I injured my left ankle, my senior year, about 5 weeks into the season,
well,
and I missed the last 6 games because the metatarsals were all damn. Our trainer
yeah,
said you would have been better off if you had broken it, and I
yeah,
didn't know how to take that at first. But I missed the. I go to the combine, and I was the slowest guy I think they've ever recorded on time because
sure,
I wanted to push myself through. I can do this. What an embarrassing fiasco that turned out to be.
right,
You mentioned something a moment ago. Hindsight. What today? Shador Sanders, or just a couple of weeks ago, said, "I'm going to go, but I'm not going to do anything." What a
right,
smart move on his part to be able to say, "Look, I'm not going to let my in. I'm not prepared the way I should be right now.
yeah,
Come and see me in a month or two." Would that
that's
have
it.
been something in hindsight that you probably should have done yourself? Maybe wait for. Did they even have um, Husky Day, or where you would work out just before the draft in a private workout at the school with some of your other teammates?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, all the above to what you just said. Yes, I should have waited to perform, and looking over at some of these guys that had gotten some advice, period, or at least better advice, which I pretty much received none at the UW at that time. But they were uh, Mike Barrows and some of these guys I'd become friend with from Miami and Florida State. All these guys were sitting over on the side, and I I was so uneducated for the whole thing. I thought you had to run. I thought if you showed up at the combine, you had to do it, and
Yeah.
which is not at all the case. And you're right. I should have just worked on our pro day. I should have just focused on that. And I hate to make excuses and say woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I definitely it's one of those things that when you think back on it, you think, boy, if I would have had a little bit of advice, and taken it from there. And in hindsight, again, I'm not even sure if I should have played in those postseason games.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, we had guys. I was playing with guys that had been off since before Thanksgiving, and were as fresh as could be. And it just one of those things that you love the game, and it's an honor to play in some of those postseason games, and playing on the Shrine game and what that means to a lot of youngsters, and helping them out. So I don't know. It's tough to say.
Well, we're not making excuses. I'm just saying this is part of your story then. And so
It
you
is. It
finished the
is.
season, your senior, and I said the 92 draft, please forgive me. That was your senior year. It
Yeah.
was the 93 draft. So for
Sure.
clarification's sake, you finished that season. You're kind of beat up. Then you play in those games. You're kind of beat up. You go into the draft. You're still kind of beat up. And now you go into training camp and you're kind of limping there, right? A little wounded. You
Yeah.
re-injure a groin. It doesn't take much. And next thing you know, you go, I'm playing with half of what
Yeah.
my body is capable of doing.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I was, and I'll tell you, I felt good, and I always did. On the 9-on-7, I could play the run. I could get quick reads and shut down the run and this and that. But and the special teams and all that kind of stuff. But it was just, but I wasn't. I wasn't myself. I'll just say that. I
Yeah.
was not myself, and I was, just trying to game it and get out there and do my thing. And especially when I think back to the process with Chicago, they had Ditka's scouts always came around. When they came around, they always came down and talked to me. I felt like there was some type of connection a little bit, and just with that mentality of kind of the smash mouth game. And then of course he gets let go, and Wannstedt comes in. They still draft me, and I'm guessing it must have been those old scouts that still were in coach's ear, and they ended up grabbing me. And I was not quite what Wannstedt was looking for. I was a little maybe too downhill and less. I could run. I was rangy, but I wasn't just a speedster like he liked down at Miami and those kind of guys. It was different, so yeah, he let me go, and that was I had a good camp, and there's no hard feelings, but it was over and
Well, four
over
games
now.
to five. Did you have a fifth preseason game back in the early 90s? Do you remember?
No, no, we didn't.
Okay.
Yeah,
And so
no,
at the end of the fourth game, then is that when you found out?
exactly. Yep.
Okay. They call it the Turk. I had knocks on the door. I had someone tap me on the shoulder. When I was at breakfast, I've had a couple of different experiences with that. What was that? What was the Turk's experience with you?
Yeah, no, that was it. It was a hey, coach needs to see you. It was just kind of a little quiet, yeah, tap on the shoulder,
Yep.
and that was it. And as soon as you feel it. So
Yep.
it was one of those deals.
Yeah. Coach wants to see you. Bring your
That's it.
playbook.
That's it.
Right.
Exactly.
You,
Bring your
you,
playbook.
you're just the Rose Queen after that. Bye
That's
bye. I know I'm not
that's
here
right.
anymore.
That's right.
Now, what
Exactly.
happens after that? You end up in Pittsburgh, though. So,
Yeah. So I
were the
come back.
Steelers interested before the draft?
Well, I wasn't aware of that, but I found out that they had were looking to grab me in the later rounds. Didn't work out, and so I ended up. I had worked out for the Seahawks the same week, and had a good workout with them, and it was one of those where they said to me, "Hey, Dave, we're probably going to sign you at the end of the week." And so, uh, I go home, and then the next night, I think it's like a Tuesday going into a Wednesday, and the next morning, Pittsburgh calls, and they said, "Hey, Dave, we'd like to have you out here, this and that." And I said, "Is this?" I, I, I I'm not sure if it was the GM or who it was, but I said, "Is this pack your bags, come out, or is this I'm just coming out for a workout?" And he said, "No, pack your bags." And so I was just it was just practice squad deal, and then I ended up doing that for a few weeks, and then I was put on the active roster, and just did a little bit of special teams. Wasn't active. It was toward the end of the season. I did get to play up in the Kingdom back in up in Seattle, which was fun.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
yeah, even though we lost, you're probably around. It was that that year in '93, but Hawks beat us, and yeah, it was fun. I met a lot of great guys, had a lot of good times up there. And again, my groin, that second, that camp of the '94 season, groin went again, probably about halfway through camp, and tried everything, tried wrapping it, tried everything, and it just wouldn't heal. Of course, you try to come. I still remember Kevin Green, and God rest his soul as well, but he told me, "Don't come back, Hoff. Don't come back until you're
Yeah.
healed." And I of course I didn't. You feel that as a guy that's on the bubble. You feel you got to get out there and prove yourself, and that was stupid in itself. But hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't tried and still got let go, I would have kicked myself for not getting out there.
Now
So
this is Cower's first year. Is this right? Am I
he
correct?
was I'm not sure if it was his first year. It might have been. It's a good question. I You know what? I don't recall. I think it might have been his second year. I'm not sure,
Okay.
but yeah. But
I
um,
I know I
he,
was a free agent. I was out there his rookie. He picked me up
or
at the
yeah.
airport
Wow,
to
wow,
take me
really?
from, and what is it, a 10-minute ride from the
Yeah,
airport to
that's
the
right.
stadium.
Yep, yep.
And they tried like crazy. I worked out at a little facility where they played tennis, and it was raining, it was cold, and so they wanted to do something inside where it wouldn't get wet.
Was it out
And
there at Pitt, or was
that,
it, or was
now,
it? Yeah. Okay.
forgive
Yeah.
help me if I'm wrong. Please forgive me, but the Steelers were not very generous. If it you're
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I would
That's
have
it.
made less money by traveling from Atlanta to Pittsburgh with signing bonuses and everything.
Yeah.
So, what's the matter? We're the
Yeah.
Steelers, but I have to admit,
Yeah.
what a
Yeah.
what an amazing organization. What was it like for the first time you dress on game day? You see your name on the back of one of those, either the white or the black
Yeah,
jersey. Oh my
yeah,
God, are you kidding me?
yeah. It was, yeah, no, it was special. No, exactly. And that logo on the helmet, that goes back to I mean, holy cow. Like when we were growing up,
Yep.
I mean, man, that was what it was about. And you were talking about Lambert a little bit ago, and Mean Joe and these guys, and offensively they had ridiculously the their center and Franco and all these guys. I mean, just in I think they kind of epitomize the whole blue collar thing, and they really that's why they're so popular, like even today, just the what they exude and their image, and they play like it too. I know they've had some rougher times, but it was a real it was a treat. And I lived in some apartments just right up the way from Three Rivers Stadium, and I'd walk half the time down to practice, and it was just it was cool. The people around knew you, and they were friendly, and the players were a part of the community, and I'm sure they
Yeah.
still are, and that
Yeah.
was a big deal.
Plus, you said that you played in Seattle in the Kingdom. I would imagine it was probably about 65-35, 35% Steeler fans. They travel
Yeah,
so stinking well. Did you ever feel like you were really on the road? Because any
yeah,
place you go, it's just loaded, crammed to the gills.
that's
Where
right.
every empty seat is taken by a Steeler fan.
That's right. The Steelers. I'm not sure if they match up with the Packers and as far as traveling, but man, the Steeler fans, boy, they do, and they come with it, and they're tried and true,
Yeah,
and they'll be there anytime, and it's fun, and it's neat playing for a place too that's got a defensive history in that, and so it was. No, we had some great guys, and Greg Lloyd and Kevin Green and Chad Brown, who was my year from Colorado,
was Kirkland there at the? Was Kirkland also on
yes,
at that
that's
time?
it. LeVon was there.
Nice.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
a
man, what a
what,
wonderful guy.
what
Yeah,
a beast he was, right? And Harrison
huge,
and
huge. Yeah,
who
that's
are you
yeah,
thinking of?
yeah, yeah, and we had Joel Steed, and they had that train with your rival college there with the Buffs, and that
Yeah.
yeah, they were they must have had some scouts down there that were dialed in. So
Yeah, Slash was something else at that time and doing
yeah,
well. But
that's right, that's right.
um,
Yeah,
the organization itself, I your practice uniforms are the ugliest things I've ever seen in my life. The cheapest material. Again, they saved a bunch of money, some way, shape, or form, to not have to put it into their their practice uniforms or everything. Like just that yellow on yellow. Just I'm sorry, guys.
You're right
Doesn't work.
though. It's so true. Yeah, exactly. I can't argue
Atrocious.
with that. I
Yeah,
can't
I know.
argue. Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. But everything else about it, small town. I know in the baseball world, there are plenty of they've done surveys with a bunch of major leaguers, and they said, "Hey, what's your top place to play on the road?" And
Really?
Pittsburgh is notoriously number one. It's
Wow.
small. You can walk from one place to another. There's
Oh
plenty of
yeah.
little bars that you can go
That's
to where
right.
you can hang
Uh-huh.
out and kind of
Mars Bar. Yeah, yeah.
be lost and yet still have a good time and maybe enjoy your an evening or whatever it is.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
food is
yeah.
nice. It's not too
That's right.
expensive.
Yeah, good
So
Italian food. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
no,
Good Italian food. Yeah, yeah.
you got to be a part of that for the remainder of that season. And then what are you thinking? Is it my body can't hold up anymore? What's
Yeah,
next?
well, you know what? So it was the next camp, and I was looking forward to having a year, like a full year with them, and it was, and that's like I mentioned before, about halfway through camp, it was the on the kickoff return. It was just a simple turn and run. Nobody touched me. It was the old deal. Make sure that the ball's kicked and they're not doing an onside kick. It was just practice,
Yep.
and I turned and morning practice during double days, and I turned and it just same left groin just it went popped and I knew it and. Of course, I'm out there trying to do the next, couple snaps, and the trainers are looking at me, and they stopped it. And actually, Kyler himself said, "Hey, Dave, let the guys check you out." And man, I knew, and yeah, it was just, that feeling, and it's just, when you play linebacker and it's car crash after car crash, but then when it's just a pulled or partially torn muscle, it's just like, come on, man, how can this happen? And in this crazy game that we love and the whole country loves, it happens, and I'm sure they have um, a lot better treatment methods than they did back in the day, and guys recover quicker. But it was that's a tough one to heal, and it takes time, as I know from going all the way back to my senior year in high school. It just there was that same thing, and it just would come back and haunt me. And yeah, you never want to make excuses, but man, there's just no way to get around that.
So what's the next step for you? Do you go back to Seattle? Do you go to California? Do
Yeah,
you
that's a
stick
good. You know
around for the
what's
whole year?
yeah, yeah. No, so when I got let go, I remember myself and John Volpe was a running back from Stanford. We both got let go, and we ended up following each other back to the West Coast. About halfway through, I think he went his way and I went mine, and I ended up going back to um, Seattle. I wanted to watch my brother finish his last year of uh, of his Husky career, and he was a captain that year, defensive lineman. And it was neat. I went back and finished, and then my agent actually called me and said, "Hey Dave, they're starting this World League of American Football up again. If you want to show the scouts that you're healthy and can play, or if you just want to go have a good time, I'd be happy to put your name in the draft." And so I did that. I got grabbed early to the London Monarchs, if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, Harp, I really thought it was I'm gonna go over there and just own the thing. And man, it was really good quality players. It was a bunch of imagine a lot of second second stringers and maybe and some other backup level guys from the NFL being in the league. And it was good ball. You'd recognize a lot of the names
Yeah.
and a lot of the guys, and it was an honor to play with these guys, and we had fun, and it was fun for me to kind of see see Europe a little bit, and um, I and again there I had a in camp I had a neck thing, and they were questioning if I would if I should even play the season, and I talked to the trainer. We had a real great trainer that was with the Broncos and then the Chargers down the road, James Collins, wonderful guy, and he and I we had some good talks, and I decided, yeah, I'm going to do it, and I'll watch myself at practice and take it easy. But over the years, I think I told you this. I always thought I was getting a little shorter, and but it was just the compression on the neck that was making me. I was a wishful 6'2", and then I ended up being about 6'1" in a quarter or so,
Yeah.
by the end. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of us are like that.
Well, inside linebackers especially, yes, without a
Yeah, yeah,
doubt.
yeah.
And fullbacks, right? You got to have a couple of
Hmm,
fullbacks in
hmm.
there that I was 6'2" at one point, and now I'm 5'8", and I'm
Yeah,
teasing.
that's right. That's right. Yeah,
But the London experience, the way I looked at it, Dave, that was a league sponsored group of guys in case they had another strike. They could at least put some guys out on the field that had some experience that wouldn't cross the line, and they could have some quality play. Is the reason that I think that was behind it. And you had a bunch of guys that were fairly um, they were healthy enough to where if a starter got hurt, you could call somebody in off the roster, and it would only take a couple days to learn the playbook, and you could have a plug and play situation type thing.
exactly. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. You nailed it. That's exactly what I think it was for. And yeah, we had some great guys. I stay in touch with a few of them, and
Yeah,
yeah, old Brad Johnson. He was with the Vikings back then, but he went down to Tampa and won a Super Bowl, and some other guys that were backups other places over the years. It was good times and met good people, and that's what it's all about.
well, you
So
mentioned the London team, and I'm thinking of Frankfurt off the top of my head. You've got Barcelona. They had a
that's
team. There's
right.
there's a couple of different places.
Scotland, yeah, they had Scotland,
The
Barcelona,
Claibornes, right? Isn't
yeah,
that what they were called?
Dusseldorf,
Or
yeah, 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 all the Claymores, yeah,
Claymores, right?
yeah, yeah.
They didn't have a Northern Ireland team. Unfortunately, they wouldn't have played football. They'd have just
Yeah,
come out
that's
at
right.
hatchets.
Yeah, car bombs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
All right, so you're done with that. Now, how eventually, when in the book do you take the time to say, now what do I do?
Yeah, so, right away, coming back to the States, I knew that it was time to get a real job, time to look to the future. And of course, I'll tell you, I had no idea what I wanted to do going through college, going through. I knew hey, I'm here at school. I'm going to get my degree, sociology. It was just something that worked out. It was kind of, and I took these criminal justice classes. We didn't have criminology or anything like that up at University of Washington, but it married up with the sociology. Um, Thought about coaching, thought about some different things, and then um, and I'll mention his name. There's a guy that I met when I was up in I'd probably been back in Seattle for a few months, maybe 6 months. Met this fella named Don Glasser, and he was a former Navy SEAL, and then he was an FBI agent. He was currently an FBI agent when I met him, and
Okay.
he was on the original hostage rescue team. He was one of these guys. Um, he's my kind of guy. He's your kind of guy. He's everybody's kind of guy. He's just one of these. He's a humble, badass, smart guy. He was fun to talk to. He lives down in Florida now. I still yap with him, and wonderful guy. He's done a lot of things. Actually, our country should be grateful, and they are, to have people like him and some other folks I won't mention, but that he told me, he said, you've ever considered, being an agent, and he was talking about everything, FBI, DEA, Secret Service, Marshals, all this, and I really, but I didn't even know kind of how to get started in that. And so what happened was, he told me about his some of his stories and how he got going and all that. And I said, yeah, um, let's fill out some applications and see what happens. And
Really? So you
yeah, yeah, yeah,
did it start as a friendship that you
yeah.
were just two guys talking, and then, well, what do you do? And then he says, what do you do to you? And you go, I don't even know what I'm going to do. And then does he kind of lean forward? Well, I might be able to help you out with that. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
and so we actually had a common friend that he was a guy that his name's Donovan Schmidt. He had come from Palm Springs. I was his host when I was maybe a sophomore or something like that on his recruiting trip.
Okay.
He was a linebacker, came up, showed him around. He ends up committing to the school. We're friends. He ends up being a captain his last year. I think that was might have been the same year as my brother. But anyways, he ended up being neighbors with this fella Don Glasser, and when I had moved back to Seattle, I'm just kind of jacking around, um, talking about coaching and this and that, and he says, um, "Hey, my neighbor would like to, talk with you." And I told him that you were, thinking about, some different things, and maybe you'd want to talk to him about, what he does. And so it was just it was a kind of a simple introduction,
Okay.
and we had a lot in common, and talking about different things. And of course, I was loved hearing about his cases and some of the things he'd done and some of the training he'd been through and that kind of thing. And he's a team guy, and then he tells me a neat story, that he was in. So he went to Utah. Um, the Utes for he was just a student. He went and to school there, and he is in the cafeteria one day, and the guy and this older fella comes and taps him on the shoulder. It's one of the coaches, and he says, "Have you thought about playing football?" And and he's Don's 6'3". Back then he's probably, I don't know, 240 or something like that. But he's put together. He's an athlete. He can run. He can fight. He was the Navy heavyweight boxing champ. He's a dude like
Right.
you and I would say. And the coach asked him, and he ended up in something that you'll appreciate. He ends up being a long snapper, and he's on the team, and he ends up earning a scholarship. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
and he's I think he's a backup guard, and he like he's the ultimate teammate. And again, I still talk to him today, and been um, he's just a wonderful guy. But um, I'd say it's I guess I'd say it's kind of his fault that I ended up going all this way. But I ended up filling out all these applications, and back in the day it was all hand. And my dumbass, I literally hand wrote them. I didn't even type it. And some of these people were like, "Oh my gosh, who's this clown?" Hand writes his
I
thing on
can't
it.
read this. What is he
Yeah,
telling me? I don't know
that's
what
right.
you're. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the I guess long story short, I the Secret Service was the first one that worked out. Some of them are on these hiring freezes, and some of these are a little slower than others, and this and that. And uh, I ended up getting a call, and you go through this process of um, uh, interviews. You go in and talk to all these people, and then
Hey,
you
Dave, do me a favor. Please forgive me for interrupting.
yeah.
Clarify something for me. I'm sorry. Did you complete a Secret Service or an FBI or a CIA or any other agency? How many different applications did you fill
So
out?
I probably, you know what, probably, I want to say, probably four. I want to say Secret Service, FBI, DEA, and I remember filling out something with the U.S. Marshals.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And yeah, no, that's no, and that was it. And then I and you go through written tests. You have to pass some. Back then it was Treasury. You had to pass some Treasury exam, and then you have to. Go through some oral interviews and kind of a panel where
Yeah.
where folks kind of fire different questions, ask you, and kind of what would you do, how would you handle this, and then there's a polygraph test,
Hey,
and
did you learn to say it depends? Because
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
answer that a
yeah,
lawyer or
yeah, yeah,
somebody who's
yeah.
at it depends. I mean,
Yeah,
is it Monday or
maybe,
is it
and
Friday?
maybe, yeah, that's right, exactly. Sometimes, yeah, yeah, exactly. It depends though, covers everything for you because it
Pretty
just,
much.
it
Yeah.
depends. Yep, and that, and
Polygraph. Sorry, I left
no,
it.
no,
Okay.
no,
Yeah.
and speaking of that kind of it depends thing was I remember going through and explaining to some of the growing up, and you're a football player, and that's not who you are, but what how you're wired and everything, kind of spells out some things, and so yeah, I had to talk about some things that I did growing up, and it wasn't like end of the world type stuff, but and finally this guy, he was from North Carolina. He was kind of a good old boy, and he stops the machine, and he says, David, and he says, relax. He says, we're not looking for a damn choir boy. Like, just like relax and answer the questions. And he goes, I don't, if it's just little stuff and this and that, and this and that. And that was enough to get me to like, okay, all right. It's not like I, you know, broke into a place and, stole
I stole a pencil from
jewels.
my
Yeah, no,
my
that's it. Okay,
classmate in
well, see,
fourth
yeah, see,
grade.
but that's it. Yeah, see, and all that stuff. And when you're on the box, as they call it, you're sitting there, and you start thinking of all this stuff. I mean, you start thinking about, hey, I took a pair of used cleats from when I was a sophomore, and or what all
Yeah.
this bullshit that nobody even really cares about. But it all starts coming up, and it's all brought, and these guys are good at what they do, and so
Yeah.
I went and so finally though, but when he said that, I understood. I took it the right way, and I took it just to make myself relax. And hey, and unless there's something serious, we're not, we're like, and to be honest with you, like you're not going to be any good on the streets or any good, doing some of this type stuff if you haven't lived a life a little bit. And it's so it's I get what he's saying, and I hope that they keep that in the forefront today.
Is it,
Yeah. Sometimes I'm a little worried that we're getting a little soft.
Dave, is it fair to say that part of what you learned during that "Hey, relax" is just tell the truth now? We
That's
don't
it.
care. We don't
That's it.
care about what you did. Just don't lie about it.
That's it.
Okay.
And no, and so the thing is yeah, and because down the road you've got to say, and maybe you're in court, man, have you lied under oath before? And you want to be able to say, no, I haven't. And
No.
and and thing is, you have to be able to say that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I lied to my mom in third grade when I, you know, had mud on the bottom of my shoes and whatever. But like, no,
I bet
yeah.
cookies coming out of the side of my mouth, and I said, "No, mom, I
That's
didn't have
it.
a cookie."
That's
Yeah,
it.
of
No,
course.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
So that's no 100%. That's the thing, and just hey, if you did it, say it, and let's get it over with. And that's a good it's a good motto for life. But
I
it's
agree.
also it was one that needed to be said, just because of us having to testify in court.
So you finish the polygraph. You pass, I would imagine, with flying colors. What's the next step? Were there 100 other things that you needed to do before you finally
Yeah,
got someone
yeah,
make an
yeah.
offer?
Yeah, there was, there was just kind of a panel interview with three veteran agents that were just kind of, I don't want to say hammering. Yeah, I mean, I kind of enjoyed it, but it was just an experience of answering the questions and talking about
Yeah.
real life situations, and then talking about yourself a little bit, talking about things that maybe you've been through, talk about this and that, and it was. No, it was good. I honestly I kind of enjoyed it, and I felt good about it, and I was just kind of waiting for the call.
Is it fair to say that playing inside linebacker for a national championship team helped in many respects for them to go, hey, this guy knows this guy's a leader, and for you to be able to go, look, I've been through a lot worse than this right now. This is just three people talking to me. Nobody's trying to hit me, cut my legs out from under me, or try to intimidate in any way, shape, or form. I got this. Was there a portion of that interview where you just said, even if they don't hire me, I've got this. I know exactly what I'm doing right here.
Yeah, you know what? Can I just say that the way you just worded that is exactly, you nailed it. That's exactly how you feel. That's how you would have felt sitting in my chair that I was sitting in. That's how
Yeah.
and that's how I felt. Um, there's this is all good. This is all good. Let's just enjoy the process here. There's nothing that's going to come about that you haven't. The intensity and the things that that you deal with in this beautiful game that we play, is yeah, exactly what you said. There's nothing that they're going to throw at you that's
And,
even going to get you startled. You know what I mean? Yeah.
and previous to that, your conversation with Don Glasser, he saw something in you. It's almost to the point, and again, I'm not trying to be cocky or anything like that,
Yeah.
but you'd be fools not to hire me. Knowing what else is out there, I can compete with any of those guys for what you're trying to get accomplished with this hire.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, no, that's it. That's it. And,
Yeah.
and you know what? It isn't something that you talk about, but yeah, right.
So the
Exactly.
next thing, you got this three panel, and then after that, does somebody shake your hand, said welcome aboard?
Yeah, I get a call, and then I go back down, and they kind of do the official thing, and uh, sign on the line, and
Yep.
shoot. And so I had just so I had gotten married in between getting let go, and so in between 95 and then 98, got married at later in 96. And I had a daughter in 97. So the thing that was the biggest issue for me was being gone for 6 months. Thinking about being gone for 6 months while I went through the training back on the East Coast, and so we had. I want to say, it was pretty much split down the middle. It was like 2.5 months down in South Georgia, and then by St. Simon's Island, and it's called the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. And then we went to training up in the D.C. area for another probably 3.5 months, up in Maryland, D.C.
This is in
And
the summertime. You're in Southeast Georgia
yeah, yeah.
in July or August. Come on, man. What are they thinking?
Armpit. Yeah, exactly. Just a straight,
Did
yeah,
you
straight fit.
stop
Yeah.
sweating finally just before you woke up, and then you
Yeah,
had to
that's
start all over
right.
again? Oh my
That's right.
gosh. Oh,
Exactly. Man, you remember those days too? And if you're in a camp and when where you're literally getting dressed in the locker room and you're dripping already, we've
yeah,
all been there.
yeah.
Yeah,
You got to
it's
wipe your
just
brow
yeah,
if it's
bad.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
what was that like to you? Hey, honey, I'm not going to get to see you for 6 months, or
Yeah.
call, or what? I mean, how do you start your family?
Yeah, and so there's no, and back in those days, there's no cell phones, there's no, all this kind of things that we take for granted now. We almost forget, what it was like. But they came out and visited me, for got some little 19.99 hotel motel back there, when they came, so we could hang, so we could hang. 'Cause you weren't allowed on this base to have guests out there. So
Sure. No
yeah, so
girls
we
allowed.
that's
Just like
it.
any
Just
good
like
training
camp.
camp, Dave.
That's right. That's
No
right.
girls.
That's right. That's right. That's it. And
That's why.
yeah,
That was
exactly.
me.
There you
Yeah.
go. There you go. And so no, it was it was, and then there was a little break in the middle. Um Maybe that was, I forget, but right in between the Georgia camp and the DC camp, there was a little break. So I did get to go home. I did get to to see them and hang out a little bit. So yeah, it was good, and I had full support. So that was good. But as always, you just miss them, and I'm one of these sentimental. I get homesick and that kind of stuff. So it was, I missed them, but I was ready to take care of business and kind of get on with life a little bit.
For obvious reasons, there are some things that you may not be able to mention, but what was the camp's was it a military type training? And you didn't do that, but you know how to train at the highest level from a football perspective. So I imagine there's some similarities. So like, look, I can get through this. So the physical aspect of this is not going to be that hard. I can do push-ups and I can run, but there are some other things that you're not familiar with that a guy that's been in the Marines or maybe the Navy or Army, it would be easy for him. Shooting, for example, or other
Yeah,
type of weapons
yeah,
training.
yeah. No, that's and so I'd say rope climbing, was something that was different. Trying to
Okay.
learn some technique with that, and like you said, the firearms I was not. I had shot a little bit growing up in Texas, but I was not well versed
Proficient in
in.
any way, shape, or
Yeah,
form,
exactly.
right?
No, I
Yeah.
was. Yeah, you know what? I was one of these guys. I could, and the kind of shooting that they're looking for is, you're putting it on the money, and
You got to be a marksman.
that's
Well,
right.
okay, so that's again another question. That takes time, that takes patience, right? You've got to learn how to, I made a mistake there. I got to learn to not make mistakes. And
That's right.
next day of training, I've got to show that I'm better. I'm
Right.
interrupting you. I'm sorry. I'm just saying
No,
those are all things
no.
that you're going through, right?
No, you nailed it. No, that's exactly it. And it's about and it's the little things. And like you said with shooting, it's the little thing, and to concentrate and to kind of go back about some things we talked about in the last interview of focusing on one or two small things that really help you be better overall at whatever your task is. And so it was a situation where um, I would, we had some good instructors. We had some that, that weren't so great also, but when you're talking to a guy that really knows what he's doing and knows what he's talking about, or she, and and I would soak that in and put that into use and just really focus on that and stay down. And I'll tell you, within w- within a couple weeks, you're just humming, and your confidence, just like it did back when you learned things in football, and you already have skills, God-given skills, and things that can you can use, and somebody teaches you and puts you in a position where you can really perform, it really gets fun. It really gets good. It gets fun to improve. It gets and then when you mix that, I would put myself just like we would in football. Put yourself in a position. Maybe when you're doing a walkthrough or something like that in football, it's like you would actually put yourself in a mindset that something's going on. And what I would do is not to jump ahead of myself, but I would sometimes focus on, okay, so what if this is what if this is real? After I got where I could put them on the money from wherever a position, it's like you kind of make yourself a little fired up, a little, that adrenaline that you would have in real life with the situation. And because in all reality, what I'm going to be doing in the future, I was thinking is not sitting here shooting a 300 out of 300 when nobody's around. It's like, what are you going to do when it's under pressure
Yeah.
and the stuff's going down, and so that was I would kind of work myself. I would use that football mentality of, okay, game time, this and that, violence, but still thinking clearly and
Yeah.
still having that clear mindset.
And doing it game speed, for example, is another. You said something that was really interesting to me. I've asked a number of people, hey, when you were a high school senior and then you go to college that freshman year, what would it have been like if you knew what you knew that first year in college and went back
Mm,
and had one more year of high school? And everyone says, I'd have been an All-American. I'd have been so much better. I would have improved because that next level, if you had had that at the previous level. I'm having fun with you now.
yeah,
During
yeah,
some of your training, I would imagine, especially during some of that hand-to-hand combat stuff that you need to learn about being able to stay alive and yet do your job. How much of that, if you had known any of it, would you have been a better linebacker, if you know what I'm saying, during that junior and senior year? There's so many
yeah.
skills that you go, gosh, if I had only known this a few years ago, this would have been fantastic.
Yeah, and I think some of the things that I learned, and down the road, kind of jumping ahead, when so I became kind of like we call it control tactics, but in police places they call it defensive tactics. But basically, it's fighting, and it's um, controlling bad guys. Basically, it's fighting, and
Yeah,
it's and but with a mindset where the law, where you're not just beating somebody into submission and then keep beating them. It's
you get them
the
under control so they
that's
can be
right.
detained.
Control somebody
Yeah,
exactly, and only if they're asking for it.
absolutely.
Like as my dad would say, if
And
they're asking for it.
survivorship. You're not going to let
That's
that guy
right.
hit you. I'm with you.
That's
All of that
right.
can be.
That's right. And survive. Yeah, and defend your family, defend innocent people, and it was and so I taught that at our academy, and I'm kind of jumping ahead years down the road, but it was great because I didn't have martial arts experience, but I had, yeah, we've all been in street fights and this and that, and I've and you use your explosiveness and your and whatever, and you do what you got to do, and then when you learn things like you were saying before, when you learn um, submissions and the wonderful world of jiu-jitsu and Krav Maga and all this stuff, and and you take what's real and useful, and I say those two martial arts because they're very, and I'm not saying all the other ones are don't have the same value, but things that you would use in a real street fight or a real situation, um, you it it becomes natural, and just like the things you did in football and the flow, and maybe some of those things, like you said, to add to your repertoire as your as a player. um Yeah, definitely could have, could have been interesting. I'll
Yeah.
say, yeah, for
The
sure.
martial art facet to me, and I'm not a martial art guy at all.
Sure,
I'm never
sure, yeah,
pretending, but the things that I would learn when a guy comes at you, let's say he's an offensive lineman and he wants to put both of his hands on your shoulders, your ability to counter and
yeah,
use balance and power when you need it, but yet
right.
also the speed to be able to get around that guy.
That's
Next thing
right.
you know, you are facing a running back with the ball and there's nobody in front of you. There was
Yeah,
somebody in front of you, but you learned to do that.
he's
I would
gone. Yeah,
imagine taking that into what you were learning to do. There's a bad guy and he's got a knife and he's coming at the president or he's coming at anybody. He's coming at you. You have the ability, the skill set, the speed, and the power to be able to get that knife out of his hand and put him in a position where all he wants to do is tap out, give me my
right.
handcuffs, and let's move on with life.
Yeah, no, that's right, and that's it. And the thing is, in protection, the win is not letting is having all the protected have no harm to them, and it's it's even better to stop it before it starts. But but in situations where it's gone and somebody's worked themselves into this proximity and the situation where they can do something, um, even if you get stuck or whatever, and the protectee walks off, that's a win. And it's unfortunate, but in a situation where it's just mono a mono, you don't want to take anything. You want to deliver everything to him, and not have a situation where you're having to spend a night in the ER, and that's just the reality of it. Yeah,
Sure. Yeah. Your job basically is stop the threat, right?
that's
First and
right.
foremost, stop the
Yep.
threat, and then be able to proceed with the necessary justice involved with that. All right. So,
Let me jump in and just say one thing, but because there's a lot of people that would say, and I've heard this so many times, your goal, and I'm talking about protection, and I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but talking about protection, your goal is to go home at the end of the day, and this and that, and I would say to folks, and if you're serious about what you do, well, if that's your goal, well, just stay home and lock yourself in the garage.
mm,
If that's your goal is to win if something goes down, in my opinion,
yeah,
and have your protectee be fine. And if you can be fine, also, that's a bonus. That's a bonus. But if you're fighting three guys, something might happen to you. You just make sure your guy's good and safe, and that's
sure.
executive protection. That's
Yeah.
personal
And
protection.
if
Yeah.
I'm going to split hairs with the person that says your job is to go, well, no, my job is to do my job.
Thank
And
you.
my
Thank
after
you.
I do my job, I want to go home safely. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. But
exactly.
but I also
Exactly.
need to stop threats, and I need to
That's right. That's
protect
right.
whoever it is that I'm working with.
True.
You go through the South Georgia and the Washington D.C. training, and then what's the next step?
So I go to my field office, which is actually Spokane, Washington. So I got hired
Okay.
in Seattle. We had a small office over in Spokane that had most of the folks were a retirement age, and so they sent myself and another fella out there, my buddy Doug Turner, and they sent us out there as youngsters,
And you're ready to go, right?
ready to
Now,
go, and yeah, and rock and roll, yeah.
the way I understand it, there are different options that are available. There's international, meaning that you would be outside the United States. There's domestic needs. Did you have a choice in what the next step would be for you? Did somebody approach you and say, where would you like to go, or what would you like to do next?
So, so, um, so when you're first hired, they ask you kind of what area or region that you'd like to go to,
Okay,
and oftentimes they make that work, and so basically you're a rookie, and so you don't have much say in where you're going. You're just
sure.
happy to have the job and this and that, and so. In my situation, it was I was hired in Seattle, and and they asked me, but at the same time, what are you going to say? No, about going to Spokane, and so it was a good situation. I'll tell you, I met it was a great place to start. It was met a lot of great. Uh, it was a great law enforcement community out there where I worked with everybody worked together, and we did a lot of good things. And it was a lot of good social time together, and even more so, we got a lot done and made the streets safer.
Dave, I'm going to have to break bad news to you, I guess. What if they had said you have to go to Pullman, Washington, and you have a detail there?
I did spend, I did, I was close. I was close
Were you?
to being in that area. No, well, there's not an office down there, but
All
I'm just
right.
saying I was close proximity wise yeah, I made it down there a couple times and had some interviews, and it was a little different pulling up on the campus. Yeah,
Okay. Well, yeah, Pullman is where elephants go to die, and any husky
yeah,
would agree with me that
yeah.
yeah,
That's right.
that's one of the
That's
worst
right.
things you could get. How did a presidential detail end up coming up as an option
Yeah.
for
So
you?
that was, and so did a few years in Spokane, and then I got a call from DC about coming out. I had an option of going right to the presidential detail, which is the guys in the suits and this and that, and then I also had an option of going to training, which I mentioned earlier, and with the situation. With my family situation and having two young kids and a wife battling some health issues, it was a great opportunity to go to training first, where where we could get the move, and we all wanted to go back there. My wife wanted to go back there. Kids were little tykes, but they were excited about it, and it was something that you think about. I mean, if you're going to do the Secret Service, you got to go back to DC. It's kind of the deal, and I knew that early on, well before I was even hired, and it was a situation where it was just a good move for me to go to the training side of it first to get everybody situated, let the kids get familiar with it and their schools and that kind of thing, and
Sure.
then so what I did was I went back, and like I mentioned earlier, I taught our hand to hand and our tactics, close quarter battle tactics, and learned a lot in those years too. Met a lot of great guys.
Dave, is it fair to say that I know in the military, if you're asked to teach the new recruits, that's like a badge of honor. That means you do it well enough to where we appreciate it. It would be great for you to teach the others that are coming in. Is that same type of respect given for your ability to train the young guys?
Yeah, I think it was, and that's a way that look at it, and I really, and one thing is I really, uh, and we're all kind of the same age, and so I'm in my late 20s back there as an instructor. I don't know, maybe I was 30. I don't even, or young 31 or whatever, and you've got these men and women coming through training, and I always remember saying to these guys. The very first day, I would say, act like a pro so I can treat you like a pro, and I'm not here to um, jump down anybody's throat and this and that. All I want to see, and kind of what we already know is um, effort and attitude is really all you control. And
Okay.
so, and so my job here is to teach you, and you can slowly see who people that have that quiet confidence and people that are very um, maybe already have some skills under their belt and this and that, and so you're dealing with a lot of people, exactly like you said, they're former military and this and that, and it was definitely an honor to especially when the first time that you're asked to lead, to be the lead instructor for a class and take them all the way through from start to finish. that was a real badge of honor, and to watch some of these people grow and their confidence and their skill level, and the fact that when you came in here, you people might be scared to go through a door with you, and now they'd be proud.
Yeah.
And there's a sincere confidence and skill level that they see, and sometimes um, there's coaching and that kind of stuff too back in the day that might affect people, but really making a difference in somebody's life and helping them see what they can truly do. It was fun for me, and the other thing that was fun for me was to get supreme instruction from the um, from the Hoist Gracies and the Randy Coutures and these guys that would come through our training and teach us things, and it was invaluable. And it was
Yeah.
just, and they would shape their training to the streets and not the cage, and which really means kudos to them. That the fact that we were learning things that we could actually use on the streets, and
Sure.
that was awesome.
Well, speaking of the streets, I've always looked at it this way. There's a bar fight. There's usually 4 or 5 guys that are jawing at each other. They're talking. They're all noise. And then there's one guy that in the back corner, and he's just sitting, and
Yeah,
he's just watching his beer. That to
that's
me,
right.
that's the guy you got to watch out for. That's the one
Right.
who's going to stop whatever is going to escalate in a way that nobody's going to like. Is part of your
Exactly.
training and teaching and coordinating all of that, being able to recognize who those types of personalities are.
Yeah, and some of that's from some of your experience growing up and understanding things, and then but a lot of that is to see that and feel that when you're in a spot,
Yeah.
and guys get into undercover work and get into using informants and things where you have to go in and come in under a different guise and also um, uh, feel the room extremely
Yeah.
quickly and,
Yeah.
and and be accurate, and that's and that's really important, and a lot of it is comes from things that we all experienced before we got on the job. And there's a lot of things like we were saying, like that guy telling me, "Hey, I'm not looking for a choir boy," and it's like, yeah, well, I don't want somebody that's a loose cannon, but I want somebody that's been around the block, kind of thing, and that's and that goes hand in hand with seeing that guy in the back of the room
Sure.
that you were mentioning. Yeah.
Amazing. Is there a certain amount of experience that's pre-required in terms of years of experience or something like that before you get on the presidential detail? Or is it just, hey, we recognize that this guy has something. He may be a little green, but we're going to get him right, and we're going to do so ASAP.
Yeah, and that can be touchy as well. I think I I wish and I hope that that uh, the presidential detail, all the guys that work them every day wearing the suits, that they keep the bar and actually raise the bar for tryouts for these men and women that I think I would have in particular if it was actually I don't want to get into all this a little
Okay.
touchy, but I went to the I'll just say this, I went to the counter assault team for a reason, and I'll just say this, there was a tryout, it was tough. Half the guys that try out for the selection and they're all fit and ready to go don't make it, and then another half that go to the school to be on the team don't make it,
Yeah.
and that's kudos to the guys for trying out because they trained, they're special people, but it just didn't work out, and I'll just say that I wish everything was that way.
Yeah. Well,
Is
you
what
want
I'm
to be with the
saying. Yeah.
best. When you go into any situation, I want the guy that can do at least what I can do next to me, and
Thank
I
you.
know he wants me to be the guy that can do at least what he can do next to him.
You said it, and
Yeah.
that's exactly it. And I knew when I came on, looking around, observing, and like you said, we've been through a lot, seen seen a lot of incredible people, personalities, and I knew right away, coming on that the counter assault team was what I wanted to do, just based on the history and based on being a part of something that's special. Um, like when you played in the league, I mean, you realize, hey, I'm part of something special. There's only 1,500 whatever folks doing this, and of course, I mean, you think back to getting ready for your game and all this and that, but maybe there's a week in the off season or two when you're thinking about, man, I'm blessed. Holy cow, I'm doing this, and this is a beautiful thing. I wanted to be a part of something, and also. Um, Pardon my language, but if the shit really goes down, I want to be able to make a play
Yeah.
and do something that's going to make a difference. You don't care if anybody ever knows, but you want to. You hope. At least I. It might sound different, but I hoped I was there
Right.
when it went down.
Yeah.
That because you feel like you could make a difference.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys on my team that could have made a difference, but it was just like you, yeah, you just you want to be there. You train. We trained hard. We trained um, physical, mental. And the thing is I remember there was never a point of satisfaction. It was always when we trained with the guys, we were always pushing each other.
Sure.
And we'd go down and train with the SEALs and Delta and this and that. And these guys were, man, they would just teach us invaluable things. And we were sponges just soaking it up.
Yeah. I have a friend, Terry Sladek, who I played with at Colorado State, and he ended up
Yeah.
going in the Marines, ended up as a major,
Yeah.
4 tours of duty. He's not the first to say it, but he's the first to say it to me in a way where it meant something different when he said to me, I've been trained to go to where trouble is. I'm going to where it is, not the other way
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
And I've heard that before. They have it on the commercials, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, so your aspect of this is, look, if anything does go down, I'm there. I've been trained to do it, and I'm going to be the one that stops it.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
is there any truth in summing up the way that
No, that's the
I live?
mentality. And I'll just say, God bless all those jarheads. That man, those Marines are, wow, man, they're the real deal. And thank God for them because I work with a lot of them and they're incredible folks with incredible um, moxie, mindset, and physicality, and teamwork, and
Yeah,
that's what it is. And I'll tell you, thinking back, of and then how it kind of um, the things I learned in football are the things that I guess the feelings and the high speed. So we had this game plan. You have a game plan for every game, and you have situational um, um, tendencies and yard markers, position tendencies, down and distance. All these things are factored in and going on, and then you're in this box of incredible violence and super quick decision making, and to win in that arena and that little thing does something for you and helps you and it definitely helped me in the next world that we're talking about, and it helped me, I
yeah,
think, to perform and to not be kind of something you mentioned early on, like you probably weren't even really startled because of what you'd been through before, and that's kind of how I just say you're right. That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Well, and another, you got the script and you know what your plays are going to be and all that, and then they run a double reverse.
That's it.
Now what the heck you got to do? And
That's
this
right.
now when you're talking about another person's life that is in danger, and we'll get to the presidents in just a second. But you served under presidential care. There can't be anything. So how do you prepare for the stuff that you can't prepare for? That's
Well,
so you just
yeah.
got to react, and you got to do stuff like that. That's also a great portion of what you were trained to do,
Right.
and you're the best, and you get asked to be a part of it with others, and then the whole nine yards. It's just amazing to me how this all works, and the order and the strictness that was, and the discipline that was a part of your life there for all these years.
Right. And that's exactly it. It's just like, you and you remember this also, but you can draw a play up. You can have something going on, and really the end to beat everything is to remember what you're trying to accomplish at the end here. And so, whether it's a football play or whether it's like our job. What's your job? Why are you here? And of course, something starts going and it looks totally different, and things collapse or whatever. Your job is to get this person to safety and whatever, and or take care of the bad guys while somebody else is getting them to safety. But you're part of the solution, and
Yeah,
it's and to understand that, really, the end game, the end goal, feeds what you're doing and feeds your lightning quick decision making. And it's got to be lightning quick. It's got to be definitive. It's got to be sure, and it's got to be. And you also have to be able to communicate. And you can't. And I see, there's folks that panic. There's folks that lock up and this and that, and that's just. And sometimes, the sad thing is, when small things happen, they start locking up, and you think to yourself sometimes, man, what's going to happen
sure.
when it really goes down?
Right.
And so, the end goal is always in your mind. And so, no matter what the situation looks like, if the walls start coming down from both sides, your goal is your goal, and you got to make sure, and you got to think on the fly, and you got to communicate whatever it is, if you can,
Yeah.
if there's an opportunity for it. And at the end of the day, you win, and that's
How
what
you
and that's what and
respond,
that,
trained to do, doing it correctly the first and only time. Can you think of an example where something like that in a real situation, and it doesn't have to be with the president, that you can share with us? Is there an incident that you might be able to describe?
yeah, no, there's been some situations that, there's been times where, for example, I'll just say, overseas with somebody, and they call one out over there. And so when I was on the counter assault team, we worked, sometimes in full teams where we're all kitted out, and other times we'd be, if it was a different situation, in a more nondescript vehicle with wearing more street clothes, type look. And we were there for the same purpose, but we didn't have the manpower, and we didn't have all the assets that we normally would when it's POTUS.
Okay.
The situation. I guess I'll just kind of steer around some things, but it was making the decision to stop a motorcade, when you're unsure about something. And I guess, my thing is, and I guess I'll just kind of go a roundabout way and saying, there's been times where I wasn't um, worried about what the brass was going to think about, or the um, the pomp and circumstance of making something a little awkward to make sure somebody's safe.
Right.
And so, stopping a motorcade over in the Middle East in the middle of the street before we go down, before an unknown vehicle was maybe going to follow us down, and stopping it and making sure that they were not, the thing wasn't loaded with
Yeah.
explosives.
They were authenticated before
Yeah,
you continued.
that's
Yeah.
it. Well,
Yeah.
that's it. And thank you. And that's exactly what the case was. Nobody could, somebody jumps in the motorcade, and I realized that, hey, sometimes people do this. It's like a funeral procession. Sometimes they want to beat traffic, so they jump in,
Okay.
in the motorcade. But this is 2 in the morning, and this is over, and in a place that's different, and so nobody could identify it, and then and nobody would speak up. And I think sometimes folks, and maybe even some of the stuff from last summer, it's like, speak up. Don't be afraid to speak up,
Yeah.
and say so. And some of these situations, it's like, when we played ball, we'd scream stuff at the top of our lungs if something looked off or whatever. And if you were wrong, big deal. Um, and no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
But
You're
at
going to
least be
get called
looking
an
for.
you're going to get called an idiot by a senior, but that's okay, right?
That's
Because,
fine.
well, all right,
Exactly.
you call me an idiot, but
Exactly.
I did see the blitz coming, or whatever,
That's right. There you go.
they
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's it. And it's, yeah, you can line up and play again the next down. And so it's like that. Some of the stuff like that where I stopped it a couple times, and it was, but could you live with yourself? Well, I mean, we wouldn't be living it, but if somebody followed us down and detonated underneath, I mean, you can't imagine. And it's like, and I always just think, use your head, be smart, make your decisions, trust yourself.
Yeah.
And like when we played, and there's, um yeah, and I can't get too into all that stuff, but it's like, I think it's just so important to give people, and sadly, um, it's almost like we have to give in this day and age. We almost have to give people the green light. Hey, say something.
Yeah.
Use your head and this and that. And I think some people are, maybe trusted more than others. But when somebody sees something, and if they've got a feeling, you don't always need to shut it down, but you definitely need to, take a step and see what's going on for sure.
Absolutely. Do me a favor. We've hit on some of the stuff that I want to be careful
Mm.
about being able to speak freely about it because it's not an incident that has national security or anything like that. But I also want to touch on maybe some on the lighter side. You were with President George Bush. You were with President Obama. You had missed the Clinton administration, so you weren't a part of that. Is there a funny or a neat story that you can think, or just one that would put a smile on the face of somebody? When you think of Bush, for me, one of the first moments is when he's standing on the mound at Yankee Stadium after 9/11 and he throws a strike. And I find out later that Derek Jeter in the bowels of Yankee Stadium goes out and says, "Hey, Mr. President, glad you're here. Really appreciate it. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't throw a strike, they're going to boo you." So George took, and he's going out, and he's got his full, he's got a chest
Yeah,
full of armor that is protecting him and all
yeah,
that.
all right.
And he drilled one. It was a little high and outside, but I think a good umpire would have called a strike on that. Or a person out
Yeah.
of nowhere that, hey, we don't know what we got here, and some kid comes up and hugs the president and says thank you. Do you have any really cool stories like that you can share?
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's, there's a few. And W was such a character that he, and I can't talk about, like, friends with him or anything, but just a character for sure, and a neat guy, I think. And I appreciate him and his faith and and just his attitude towards the vets and all that. And I my when he was running for office in '02, I was still in Spokane. It was right before, we moved out to DC, and my wife was a huge W fan, and um, he had his appearances and this and that, for the election, giving speeches. It's back at the airport, and they said, and they were sometimes, as they'll do, they'll take pictures with the cops and this and that. And I was standing there off on the side, and somebody came up that was with the staff and said, "Hey, would your wife like a picture?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, she'd go nuts. She'd lose it." And she went up there right right at the steps of the plane, and she's sitting there, and they're having a little chat, and she is so freaking serious, and he's trying to have a good time, and she says to him, she says, "Sir, you have to win this election." And he says, "Oh, that, we plan to, this and that." And right then, oh, they're taking a picture straight on, and he's looking at the camera. He's an old pro. He's looking back at the camera, and
Right.
she's looking right at his ear. And I wish I would have had it to put up there for you guys. And um, she says, "No, you don't understand. You you have to win." And I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is out of control." And he's doing that little chuckle
Oh yeah,
thing,
yeah,
and
yeah. Right.
yeah,
Right.
and I never knew, and we got a great picture of that somebody sent us, but it could have been the most beautiful thing. Both of them standing there at the stairs, looking back at the camera. It could have been, and she's sitting there like she's giving a lecture to her little boy, and I just thinking, oh my gosh,
Right.
what's going on
No,
here?
that's my
Yeah,
wife. No, guys, that no,
yeah,
that's,
that's it.
I love her, but
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh my
Have a good
gosh.
flight home, sir. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know. Yeah, but no,
So
but
Dave, so
yeah,
Dave,
good
when did it
times.
all fall apart and you weren't on the detailing? Well, that would be when my wife
Yeah, that's
says
right.
no. Yeah,
That's right.
no.
Exactly. Find a new job. That's right. Yeah.
Well, for those that are watching or listening in the future, this isn't a political show, but I'm just saying, if you work for the
Right.
president of the United States, love him or hate him, he's still the president of the United States. So
That's right.
there are
That's
some really
right.
cool things that happen.
Sure. Sure.
Um, Clinton used to go to a McDonald's and go get French fries. I'm sure it was a hassle for the folks at McDonald's having to deal with 50 guys that are all around that you don't see, that are making sure that the facility is secure, when all he wants to do is buy some French fries for somebody
That's
and enjoy
right.
a Big Mac.
That's right. I know. I always hope somebody went in there and got them for him, but you never know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and Biden would get an ice cream, and
Sure.
just
Sure.
different examples. Were you at the beer summit when President Obama had the beer with what was it, the Princeton professor or somebody that there was, he was just trying to
No, I
bring some people
wasn't.
together.
Yeah, I missed that. I missed that
Okay,
one.
yeah.
Or if I was in the back. I was in the back room, yeah, out of the picture. So
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but just interesting, and I guess we could say in air quotes, great moments in American history, right?
that's right.
You
That's
got to be
right.
a part of a few of those.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I want to have a little fun and a little levity and enjoy it, but also there's
yeah,
serious things as well. And one of the serious things that I found out about through you is when you did lose your wife. And do you want to
yeah,
share anything about that, please?
yeah. So she beautiful, beautiful lady, and she was hit by a drunk driver when she was growing up, when she was 15, and had some head injury. Stuff, and she dealt with depression and anxiety for years and years. And luckily, we were blessed. The Lord blessed us with with two beautiful kids. I got a daughter, Callie, and a son, Jagger, and they're in their 20s now and doing fine. But she over time tried everything, tried medication, tried counseling, and this and that, and unfortunately, she committed suicide and died about 6 years ago. And it's something that is with us, and we deal with. Something we all think about frequently, and we miss her and we love her. We know with her faith in the Lord, we're thankful for that, and We it's and she had a great cast of friends and family, and it's and I know they all feel it too, and it's one of those things that I think um, is it's one of those things sometimes it's kind of taboo to talk about with people, and so I just kind of want to let people know that, for one, we understand, my family understands, if anybody ever need, if we can ever help anybody, but also it's also something that folks need to be aware of, as far as listening to people, and I know a lot of times there's no real easy or sure sign that something like that's going to happen. There's no real green light that says move ahead. So it's just so it's tough. But yeah, thanks for letting me talk about it, and thanks for letting me share my heart with this. And it's she's a great lady, amazing horse rider. Man, she could barrel race and jump, and was a master, like literally. Uh, they talk about a horse whisperer. She unbelievable.
Really?
I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Hmm.
I've been around, and it was she could. Somebody would bring a horse when we lived in Maryland. Would bring a horse and say, "Hey, my horse is sketchy around puddles and this and that. Could you work with it?" And by the end of the day, it would be swimming in the river. It was just amazing
Yeah.
what she could do with that, and just a gift. And I know that animals in particular, but especially horses, were always a nice um, getaway and escape for her, in a
Sure.
special place.
And they're so
So
smart. They're so intelligent. They're,
yeah, yeah,
when you learn to speak their language in a way
that's
as a
right.
human that you can help recognize that their pain or their
Yeah,
fear, their anxiety can be dealt with. Your wife obviously figured out how to do that and was very good at it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So and that was it's something that and she met a lot of great people through um, the equestrian community, and the people I still stay in touch with today. Right now I'm thinking of her great friend, Erica, that was her best friend growing up, and has a horse farm over in Livermore, and does dressage stuff over there. And yeah, she just had a lot of great people. She said it like it was, whether you liked it or not, and
Whether you're a husband or a president, right? It didn't
that's
matter.
it. Yeah, that's true. Exactly. There you go,
Let me
brother.
ask you
Yeah,
this though, and this
yeah,
may be a sensitive subject. You
yeah,
mentioned that she was going through depression. Was there a I'm sure you found cases of this where it would appear in your relationship and through her family and yours, and recognizing some of these things. And I'm not asking you to
yeah,
give me intimate details, but how does the average person, how do they follow up when they know somebody's going through something, and they do so in a way that is loving and helpful, instead of just pushing it off on the side, patting them on the head, you're going to be okay? Is there a difference in the way that you approach that? Is there something that you were able to learn later on that uh, I I I I know what she was going through was tough, um, and I did everything I knew at the time to
yeah,
do it the best way, but it was even deeper. So I'm asking, is there
yeah.
a better way for you to learn how to recognize survivors, to recognize things so that they can hopefully have more meaningful conversations, so nobody ends up at the wrong end of a suicide?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think really all we can do is, when I look back, I would have never guessed. There are other times that I felt like things were worse, and this and that, and you would have never, you could never. I couldn't put my finger on oh wow, this is going bad or anything like.
Sure.
So what I think is just to um, be open, and don't overlook any small things, and um, keep always be willing. And the thing is and it's tough because people are trying to live their lives, and you're trying to keep things moving along as a family, and giving attention. And some things I'll tell you, sometimes it's just things that you couldn't even it, I guess I'll say this. My brother, I remember talking to my brother Matt afterwards, and he said, you could you could go round and round with this for 100 years, and you could never put your finger on why right now that this happened. It was just um, sadly, and you really can't put your finger on exactly what it is. I think to continue to encourage people, and to say genuine, positive things to them, and also um, keep encouraging them to get help, and to talk to somebody, a professional, and even just a friend. And the thing is, she had um, supportive friends, and we were there as a family, and it's an unfortunate and a surprise, when something happens like that. And the thing it's the sad thing is it's kind of a mystery why exactly, what exactly, spurred them on. You can go back days before that, and everything just seemed, you know, terrific. And it's terrific, with an asterisk. Are terrific. What it was, she had health issues and some different things, so it was frustrating. And I think sometimes it's also good to realize, hey, maybe a lot of this stuff is snowballing, and maybe it's working up on somebody. And just to be aware of I guess the totality, not just the mental but the physical, and how that affects the emotional side of life. And that's something that we all need to be aware of. Is and like when we played ball, and I'm not trying to compare this with anything that folks deal with that's life threatening, but um, you it gets frustrating when you're dealing with these injuries over time, and this game that we love, and it's kind of our life for a while, for a period of time. It becomes something that man, we get all worked up on, and we're all around that. And then there's also the part that um, somebody going through life, and going through life's issues and relationships, physical pain combined
Yeah.
with the emotional. And I think that can be a big thing. I think the physical combined with the emotional can be what sometimes maybe just feels like it's too much.
You made a very interesting point there, because I completely changed what my next question was going to be based on what you just said. We, as athletes, were trained to get up. You're
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
You're okay. I know it hurts, but you're okay. And now you're going to get back in, and you're going to try it again, and we're going to get a little bit better.
that's
Not
right.
everybody goes through that type of thing. And please, I'm not insinuating
I
this,
get it. I
but you
understand. Yeah,
you gave a example of some of the things that she was in a car accident, and I would say it's just a stander by. Maybe that was a trauma experience for her, where she relives that over and over. What did I do? Why would he hit me? Why on earth did I get what? You know what I mean? I don't know. But being able to recognize that there are people that are out there that are dealing with pain or trauma or anxiety about something, and they don't know how to get back up and get back in because they haven't been trained that way. And again, I'm not saying this about your wife,
right,
but what
right.
I am saying is that shouldn't we all be better at recognizing somebody's issues, taking it seriously, and doing whatever we can to try to make sure that they're safe, that you don't have trauma right this instant. So let's try to work our way through it so it doesn't become an issue for anybody ever again. Can we try to
Right.
accomplish that? I'm hoping that would be something that anybody dealing with anxiety or issue or even thoughts of suicide would be able to say,
Right.
this is an answer that might work. You know, some folks go to medication, some people go to therapy, some people
Right.
don't do anything at all. So we can just try to find a way to keep at least one more person from trying to
Yeah.
take their own life.
Yeah. No. And you're exactly right. And so and to get back to being hit by a drunk driver, I kind of skimmed over that, but she had a very serious head injury,
Okay. Yeah.
and then she had her seatbelt on, but had some very major interior. They did s- some interior bleeding, which was
Okay.
and they didn't realize at the time, but so her spleen blew up. It kind of just like I guess just shattered, and there was a little piece wrapped around the artery that goes to one of her kidneys, and so that slowly kinked off and died over the next year. But the head injury. So she's 15 years old, and I'm going out with her, and she's gosh, what was she? Maybe like 26 or something, and um, there were still, so she's in the right front passenger seat in this accident. There was still little bits of safety glass coming out that would of her scar area there in her head. That's how hard the impact was on her head against the side. Um, and and you know she'd be sitting. It didn't happen all the time, but every now and then we'd be driving around and she'd and I said, "What are you doing?" And she'd show me a little piece of. It's unbelievable
Yeah. It's a piece of glass,
the
Dave.
how that exactly
Yeah.
exactly. And so the head injury obviously was a major thing, and I think for people to don't underestimate when somebody has a situation or an injury like that. Just know that you're going to need to keep an eye on them probably forever, and it's just one of those things, and tough, a tough cowgirl that's just hey, all right, she's fine. She says she's fine, and this and that, and so, but to get them good, get them help and get them good help if you can, and I know it's tough, and you know, all people can do is try their very best to help people, and you can't beat yourself up is the hard thing, and that's easy to do, when somebody you love something happens like that. You you need to, um, you try your best and you do everything you can, and the friends and family need to understand that as well, and I think they do, and that's been a lot of support and a lot of that, and the kids, you feel for your kids. It's not ideal, but it's not the you wish they had their mom way into the future, but it wasn't the case for them. So
Yeah, and the aftermath of all of that isn't easy on anybody, but you get through it, right? One day at a time, and you do your
that's
best.
it.
And
That's it.
if
Yeah,
you get through it, and you get your head on the pillow, and you come home safely, just as
that's right.
in the Secret Service, there that's a
That's
good
right. That's exactly right. Exactly
thing.
right. So yeah, no, thanks, and the Lord's been good to us, and we got a lot to be thankful for, and I just hope that people out there, if they're in a situation like that, they can lend an ear and do the best you can. So
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. That isn't easy to do, and I'm grateful for your candidness and your honesty. I didn't have a polygraph ready, but if I did, I would say, "Come on, man, just tell me what's going on."
that's right. I'm not looking
Speaking of
for a
what's going on,
clairvoyant.
where are
Yeah.
you in your life now? What's the next step for Dave
Yeah,
for
so
you? And
so yeah. No, so right now, so I'm working for a company out here in the Silicon Valley doing protection for a CEO, and
okay,
I have the future's wide open. I'm engaged to a beautiful girl, Moya, and we don't have a date set yet, but hopefully in the next few months tie the knot, and it's been a real blessing to me. And thankful for everything about her. And yeah, and having fun with our kids, and my folks are still alive, and I've been able to be close to them down here in San Jose. It looks like I don't know if they'll be here forever, but either way, it's all good. And my brothers and I are going to be throwing my dad an 80th birthday party by hitting a round of golf up in Seattle here in the next month.
I
And
love it.
so
That's
yeah, we're doing
yeah.
that. Have
Yeah,
some food and some cocktails and cigars, and
does
act like we're big timers. Yeah.
does Dad hit the ball straighter than you do?
Well, you know what? Yeah. Well, that's an understatement.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't
Yeah,
that
exactly.
disgusting that an
It
80-year-old
is.
can play golf better than an
Yeah.
All-American, right?
Oh yeah. You know, if I can find my ball, I'm happy. So yeah,
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 no kidding. Well,
yeah.
normally when I'm in the woods, I try to find a couple others. If I'd leave with a
That's
net
it.
gain
That's
and
it.
have three more balls than I left with, and then I started with,
Yeah,
that's a good
that's
day of
it.
golf.
No, I'll tell
Goodness.
you a good story. There was a golf range on the way home from when we first moved out here to California. Um, there was a golf range on the way home from the middle school to our house, and my brother would, Steve, the one that played with me at Washington, would fill his pockets with balls that went over the fence, and we'd come home, and he got this. So we would use this shoe polish, the old white shoe polish thing, damper thing, to cover the white. I'm sorry, to cover the red stripe on it. And when we'd go golfing at there's this little cheesy golf course we'd go to, this little municipal course, and there was always newspapers stuck to to these balls because he'd set them on the 91 right there.
Yeah,
He's guilty of stealing a lot of golf balls. I wonder if he could. I'm not sure the statute of limitations. He might still have to do some time for that.
yeah.
But there would be newspaper stuck on the ball when he'd set it on there to dry. And but either way, we were thankful to have some free golf balls because we were going to lose them all anyway. So
Yeah, yeah, and there could be a Pro V1 in there somewhere that that's worth like
somewhere,
$2
yeah,
right
it's like an
alone. So
Easter egg. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly,
and
exactly.
and then there's the Schlesinger ball that nobody really wants to
Oh.
play.
Yeah,
You
you
want to give
remember
that
that?
to a
I bet
buddy.
you'd find the little pinky. Yeah, you'd
Oh
find
my
the
gosh.
pink one. Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
have a
So
great
yeah,
time with your dad. And Dave, one of the things that, for those that don't know, Dave and I have spoken a couple of times together off the air. And maybe there's some podcasting and discussion about college or pro football in your future as well.
that'd be fun. That'd be a good time, and I look forward to yapping with you more about that down the road. And really enjoy yapping with you. You and your crew do an amazing job, and are built for this, and it really shows. And when you're sitting in the seat that I'm sitting in, you can feel um, if there's any BS. And you guys are the real deal and a great team. And I'm honestly honored to meet you and consider you guys friends. And look forward to yapping with you in the future.
Yeah, well, we look forward to it as well. So Dave Hoffmann, he's been a high school great player, an All-American at the college level. He played in Chicago and Pittsburgh. He played in London, for crying out loud. He's been all over the world as a player and as a Secret Service agent. We thank you for your service to our country. There's two presidents that you served under, and many others that owe you a tremendous amount of appreciation and thanks. And we do as well. Thank you for being a part of our show here today. Again, part 2 here with Dave Hoffmann.
Thanks so much. Appreciate
You're
you
very
guys.
welcome. All right. So
God
for
bless.
Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, I'm Harper LeBel saying thank you for tuning in, everybody. Dave, I lied to you. I guess I can't pass the polygraph. I said we weren't going to go 2 hours, and we go 1:48, so it's pretty doggone close. But
Beautiful.
for
Right
everybody
there.
that was part of today's show, what a special treat. This has been a little bit of football, but a lot of non-football that in one way, shape, or form, we hope you find of interest. So for Dave himself, for Logan, and myself, thank you for tuning in to another episode. We hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your